Hello, virtuous leaders, scholars, and virtue change agents. My name is Dr. Lisa Marie Portugal, and I am the Leadership Architect. I'd like to welcome you today to a talk that I have prepared for you and in service to you. This talk is based upon one of my many books, A Culture of Excellence, Virtuous Leadership Principles for Organizational Success, a Management System. The cover slide is also the cover of the book, The Four Cardinal Virtues: Prudence, Justice, Fortitude, and Temperance. This particular talk today is called Virtuous Leadership Applied, and I would like to invite you to live virtuously. On this slide, you see my personal and professional leadership brand logo. And I also would like you to think deeply and critically about what your leadership brand and style might be. And maybe you'll create a brand logo as well for yourself. So let me start off by talking about living virtuously. We cannot achieve greatness or magnanimity unless and until we master the virtues within ourselves. Reaching greatness or magnanimity is about virtue building within ourselves, our families, communities, and others. We cannot achieve magnanimity until fortitude, self-control, counsel, justice, prudence, understanding, respect for others, temperance, humility, charity, piety, and courage are present first within us. We cannot give to others what we do not possess ourselves. So understanding how to master ourselves and build virtue is the first, ongoing, and last step required for magnanimity. And mastering the virtues is a lifelong and ongoing process throughout our entire lives. When we fall, pick yourself up and start the practice of virtue building again, and do this throughout your entire life. Magnanimity is an ongoing process and a focus we should have throughout our lives. It is also a focus we should have for working with, mentoring, and coaching others to their greatness. We can build virtue within ourselves and help others in our sphere of influence to achieve greatness in their own lives by teaching the virtues and living the virtues in everything we do. Live virtuously. Okay, so the table of contents, I will go through the About Dr. Lisa Marie Portugal page, Virtuous Leadership Applied, Virtuous Leadership and Decision-Making Process, Virtuous Leadership Model, Virtuous Leadership Framework, and then concluding with Virtuous Leadership Practices. The graphic there I have for you, let's go through that. 7 key active listening skills, starting with the top right and then going right to left. Be attentive. Ask open-ended questions. Ask probing questions. Number 2 and number 3, we do that in education all the time. It is a best practices. Ask open-ended questions. Ask Socratic probing questions. You can research that and look it up and see what that looks like. Request clarification. Ask questions. Find out if you're hearing people correctly. Rephrase it, right? That's the next one. Let me rephrase what that person just said to me so that we're both clear that we're talking about the same thing and I understand what that person is saying to me, right? And they know that I understand what they're saying because active listening, not everybody possesses these skills. Okay, number 6, be attuned to and reflect feelings. Number 7, summarize. Okay, so similarly, just as if you were writing an academic paper, you've got your introduction, your body paras, and then you conclude with your summary, right? You can do that also when you're managing and leading others, when you're having conversations with others. Okay, so here is my About Dr. Lisa Marie Portugal page. I'm not going to read through everything. If you're interested, you can stop the audio and read through that and then pick it up again. From one of my last talks, I had a Miss Lucy Van Pelt picture. Every time I see her, she just cracks me up. I just love that cartoon so much. When I was a child, she really, caught my attention, right? I love how she says this. I know it's funny, right? I make the world better. I'm a positive person. And there she is saying it with a straight face, right? Her straight poker face. But even though this is a funny graphic, I put it here because that's what we all want to do, right? We all want to make the world a better place. We all want to be a positive force for others, for our families, for ourselves. So even though that cartoon and this particular graphic is very hilarious to me, it's still a good reminder. So thank you, Miss Lucy Van Pelt, for reminding us about that today. Okay, so virtuous leadership applied. Let's start with John Chrysostom. He was a philosopher in the first century. I think it was the first century. I'll be going over critical and important philosophers in another talk later. The ethicists and things like that. But he is one of them. Happiness can only be reached by looking inward and learning to enjoy whatever life has, and this requires transforming greed into gratitude. I know when I started doing that myself, and being more, having more gratitude for the gifts that God gave me and the talents and even the weaknesses that I work on and I try to strengthen, turn into strengths, right? I have gratitude for that, and having gratitude is another factor that changed my life. So it is a good virtue to have and to practice, and something that we can teach to others and model to others. Before principle-based leadership can be applied, identifying what principles are important is the first step. This is where a virtuous leadership model can be applied for organizational effectiveness. Organizations must first decide what virtues and values are important based upon the efficacy and direction the organization desires to pursue. Furthermore, leaders should fully identify what virtues and values are important to their personal and professional leadership brand. Having clearly defined virtues and values as part of one's style and brand, as well as organizational approach, can set one apart from competitors. In today's globalized marketplace, there are many examples of poor leadership and unethical behaviors. Representing oneself through a virtuous leadership framework can aid in guiding, motivating, and presenting shared leadership vision, mission, and purpose to employees, customers, students, and partners to raise morale, strengthen stakeholder commitment, and establish brand benevolence. So not only will you establish your brand benevolence to others, you can establish brand benevolence for the brand or the organization that you're working for, right? You can promote the brand that you work for through modeling your own virtuous leadership brand. Okay, next. The notion of virtue is a representation of the highest aspirations humans hold for themselves, or the best of the human condition. I love that. When virtuousness manifests in organizations, it can be visible in displays of collective moral excellence. Don't we want to see collective moral excellence? Virtuousness in organizations exemplifies core pragmatic values, yet little empirical investigation exists regarding the relevance and definition of virtuousness in organizations. Cameron and Wynn, 2011, provided insight regarding the main findings in limited empirical studies and offered a research agenda to aid in guiding next-generation research on the notion of virtuousness. And this is important because I brought this up. I am always adding to the virtuousness empirical studies. In fact, I'm going to do a study. I have something in mind. I'm not going to talk about it yet because I've got to hammer out some details. But you as well, whenever you do your own studies, your own paper writing, and you want to submit to peer review, you can be part of this investigation about what is the relevance and definition of virtuousness and how might that affect greater society, organizations you work for, right? So you can be part of this leadership agenda. Okay, so moreover, enough evidence identifies optimism regarding the notion that virtuous organizations convincingly transcend ordinary organizations in terms of performance. The following graphic represents a virtuous leadership model characterizing what ultimately can influence a leader's decision-making process. And that will be on the next slide when I get to it. Let's see, did I cover everything there? Some confirmation is emerging that positive factors, specifically virtuousness, may provide a valuable opportunity for organizational leaders to enhance performance within the organization. Okay, so here's another John Chrysostom quote. The bee is more honored than other animals, not because she labors, but because she labors for others. That is so beautiful. All right, so here's the graphic, virtuous leadership and decision-making process. At the top, transcendence. I love that word. Appreciative, inspired, purposive, future-oriented, optimistic, and creative. Well, I love that word because I'm very creative. Drive. Let's go from right down and then left. Passionate, vigorous, results-oriented, demonstrates initiative, strives for excellence. So as we go through these, think about, do you exemplify any of these words, right? So I've been looking at this research for a long time, writing about it. You know, obviously I have this graphic in my book. So these are words that I work on in myself, both in a personal and professional capacity, and they're very important to me. So as we go through these words and any of the talks that you listen to that I produce for you, think about, am I modeling and exemplifying any of these words? And how might you do that with your creativity? Right? Collaboration, cooperative, collegial, open-minded, flexible, interconnected. Humanity, considerate, empathetic, compassionate, magnanimous, right? Meaning greatness, forgiving. Humility, self-aware, modest, reflective, curious, continuous learner. I love all these words, don't you? Respectful, grateful, and vulnerable. That self-aware, I mentioned many times, is very important. We need to know what our strengths and our weaknesses are. We don't want to have hubris or arrogance. Integrity, authentic, candid, transparent, principled, and consistent. Temperance, meaning patient, calm, composed, self-controlled, and prudent. That I'm always working on that. Patience is something I work on because I like to get things done, right? I get very motivated and passionate about what I'm doing. So these are some areas that I work on. Justice, fair, equitable, proportionate, even-handed, socially responsible. You know what? I will say this, though. Whatever our weaknesses are, like I said before, you can turn those into strengths. So if my weakness has always been impatientness, I have turned that into a strength where I get stuff done, right? I clearly, from what you can see from me, I get it done. Okay. Did we do justice? Yes, we did. Accountability. Takes ownership. Accepts consequences. That's very important. Now, that can be difficult for a lot of people when we're going through this and we're first starting to learn about virtue building. Conscientious and responsible. Courage, brave, determined, tenacious, resilient, and confident. I like to be resilient and tenacious. And then in the center, we have judgment. Do we have situational awareness? You know, in every situation we're in, with every person that we are in front of or confronted by in our lives, do we have correct situational awareness, or do we have filters on that we're not really hearing or seeing or understanding the person or the situation? Cognitively complex, analytical, decisive, critical thinker, intuitive, insightful, pragmatic, and adaptable. All beautiful words, right? Okay, so let's get to my next slide. Virtuous leadership model. A virtuous leadership model can assist in raising employee morale, which in turn aids in creating better products, services, and improved customer relationships. Empirical results indicate that when evaluated by subordinates, an immediate manager's virtuous leadership competency can greatly affect three dimensions of well-being in the workplace, such as number 1, satisfaction with the job; number 2, engagement levels at work; and number 3, work-related affect throughout a wide range of different countries and industries. An affect, just so you know, if you want to look that up, that instead of effect, affect means being able to affect someone else's emotions or affect action in someone else. So that's important, right? And all three of these factors here, I can tell you that when I have a great manager, and I have great managers in many of the institutions and organizations that I'm related to or work with, they're fantastic. And that makes me want to achieve at higher levels. It makes me want to engage more and do more, right? So those are all important things. And how, with your own skills and abilities, how are you going to get that kind of passion out of people? Furthermore, the level of trust subordinates have for a manager can greatly impact these areas as well, right? We need to have trust in people, and you know, if we have trust, if we like the person, if we respect the person, I'm going to want to deliver more for that person, right? I'm going to want to bend over backwards more for a person who's leading me virtuously, because I want that person to shine also. Okay, here's another John Chrysostom quote. When we once begin to form good resolutions, God gives us every opportunity of carrying them out. Isn't that amazing? I love that quote. It kind of reminds me of when I wrote this book. I thought, well, I'm going to write it for myself because I want to see a virtuous world. So I'm just writing this for myself if other people are interested in it. And then God gives me this opportunity to present this for you in all of these lectures and talks. So speaking from my own background, this and my own what's the word I'm trying to look for? My own experience. This really does happen, right? If you build it, they will come. Okay, virtuous leadership framework. Moreover, core leadership virtues such as humility, courage, justice, temperance, and prudence can significantly influence well-being in the workplace. It benefits organizations and leaders to clearly define organizational principles based upon a virtuous leadership framework to advance agenda and objectives using positive motivators rather than negative consequences for expected workplace behaviors and actions. I know if I have positive motivators versus negative consequences, I'm going to want to produce more and better at higher levels, right? My leaders and managers are going to see improved behaviors and actions. But again, you know, at this point in my life, obviously, because I'm a perfectionist and I don't always get things perfect, but, you know, I love what I do. I love the passion that I have for the work that I do and producing for anyone in my sphere of influence. So this is something that I have innate in me. If it's something that you have innate in you, then it's something you can teach to others, because not everyone has that ability to want to produce the very best. But again, that's going to take your leadership style and brand to help them want to produce better, right? Okay, so here's another John Chrysostom quote. It is simply impossible to lead without the aid of prayer, a virtuous life. Very good. I love that. Okay, in conclusion, virtuous leadership practices. In today's globalized and competitive marketplace, quality, sustainability, cross-cultural understanding, virtual teams, agility, flexibility, creativity, and innovativeness are important aspects of doing business that leaders and organizations must be prepared to address through an appropriate and applicable leadership framework. I love all those words I added there. You can tell I'm a wordsmith, right? I mean, I will go through painstaking research to get the words that I love to convey what I'm trying to convey to you, convey my meaning to you. This discussion examined challenges and opportunities related to effectively leading in non-traditional global and virtual organizational structures. In addition, principle-centered leadership in a globalized marketplace was considered. Moreover, the notion of personality and leadership traits as organizational assets was assessed. Keep that in mind. Think of yourself. Your personality and leadership traits are an asset wherever you go. And you want to make sure you point that out in interviews, with your own leadership, with your own managers, that who you are as a human being, what you can bring to the table, you are an asset wherever you go. And let's see, let me finish that sentence. Finally, how principle-centered leadership and virtuous leadership practices may be applied to enhance organizational effectiveness for the 21st century and beyond was presented. And I feel this quote was great to end on from John Chrysostom. What the soul is in the body, let Christians be in the world. And that's you and me, right? So here are references, and I cited from quite a few. Cameron and Wynn, virtuousness in organizations. Covey is he's very well known about principle-centered leadership. I'm going to do another talk about principle-centered leadership based on Covey's work. But I also want to keep in mind that I talk about that, but I align it with virtuous leadership because, a lot of people can have principles. Principles can mean, anything. Even negative, evil people can have principles, their own principles. So we want to know what principles we're going to define for ourselves, right? What are our virtues? What are our values? But, having your principles is important to put that out there. And then, of course, the 3 books from Mr. Havard about virtuous leadership. Another book here, a link from Manzani, and I can't say the other two last names, on virtuous leadership as well. And then finally, my book, A Culture of Excellence. Thank you so much, and it was my honor and pleasure to serve you today. I hope this is something that works for you and that you might be able to think deeply about and apply to your own leadership brand and style. Thank you so much. Goodbye.